I really wanted to do this uh, on the train, but it was nearly impossible there. Um, so, having now actually left Western Sweden, um, that's really drawn to a close the first stage of my trip. Um, I guess we're going to the second stage, which is Lapland and Norway. Um, so I'm just going to go through and kind of summarize everything that happened in the first couple of weeks, um, and then I'll probably go on to talk about just sort of my general feelings about Sweden so far. Um, so I landed in Gothenburg, which is the second largest city in Sweden, and I was staying at a place called Huntorp, near Huntorp. We were about 5 minutes, 10 minutes walk from the town. It's a little town halfway between Gothenburg and Trollhättan, the which is a pretty big city nearby. So I was staying with a couple, Anna and Jan. Anna's a Dutch-born, and she moved to Sweden when she was pretty young, and Jan was born in Sweden. Anna's a horse trainer, so the farm they've got is all horses that other people bring onto the property, and she'll train and look after for little bits. Because it was winter time, there wasn't that many horses. There was only 4. There's usually about 10 on the property. But they had 2 kids, Kajsa, who's their 3-year-old daughter, and Matthias, who was their 1-year-old son. And there was another workawayer staying with them as well, a German girl named Antonia, who's about 20, 21. And she was there for 3 weeks as well, and was supposed to be leaving at the end of January. So I spent 2 weeks there instead of 3. The first week, the whole family was there, and so was Antonia. And it was basically, we would get up in the morning. So because of what happened with my luggage not making it from Stockholm to Gothenburg, I got there at night. The next day I got up and sort of went through and did some of the work, and then the day after that I spent the whole day in Gothenburg after I picked up my luggage, and then we went back into the regular work days. So from Wednesday onwards it was sort of regular work days, and I didn't even get sort of the full instruction from Anna. I got it all from from Antonia secondhand, and she wasn't quite sure of how things were supposed to go anyway, because she'd only been there for like 3 days. And wasn't quite familiar with everything yet. So yeah, it was a bit haphazard, that sort of introduction to it. But yeah, so basically what we would do was get up in the morning about 7:30, something like that. By 8:30 we would be outside, and it was basically just go around, pick up any of the big piles of horse crap, and the horses got like feed buckets at one stage, like after all that sort of thing, like every day. And then we would go and like clean out the chicken coop, and give them food and things like that, take out the compost, and that was it. That was all the work we had. So by 10, 11 o'clock, depending on how much stuff there was to clean up outside, we were done. And we'd come inside and have lunch, and for that first week the kids were in kindergarten or daycare, so from 9 until 11 or 12 the kids were gone. But after that they were back all afternoon. Basically we just looked after them. Matthias actually he'd he wasn't doing good because he'd lost weight, and so and he didn't enjoy eating, and he was like a really really fussy eater. Um, so a lot of the time it was like trying to get him to eat something, which meant like one of us would have to pick him up and like walk him around the house and like, oh, look at this, and the other person's like, trying to put food in his mouth and sort of distract him so he'll eat it without realizing. And getting the kids ready to go to kindergarten and things like that. And Antonia had to like help bath them and change them and things like that. And then yeah, it was like in the afternoon it was like play with the kids sort of thing, but it wasn't really what I was there for. Um, and the kids were like, Kaiser, Matthias couldn't speak. Kaiser could, but Kaiser sort of refused to speak in English. She understood it perfectly well. And you could talk to her in English, and she understood what everyone else was saying, and she'd talk to her parents in Swedish, responding to things that we were saying to each other in English. But she just didn't talk. She just didn't speak it, which was frustrating at times. But yeah, so it was like basically we just had to look after the kids while Anna went off and did not really much of anything. And Jan was at work all day. He worked for the city of Gothenburg in IT security. And then yeah, it was like in the afternoon, Jan was tired from work and Anna was just generally worn out, so everyone would sit on the couch and watch Discovery Channel documentaries. And the kids would sort of run around and do their own thing. That was about it. And for that first week, I was like pretty badly jet lagged as well, so I was getting up at like 3, 4 in the morning. And then I'd be dead tired by 11, 12 o'clock. And then sleeping at like 2 or 3 for a little bit, waking up at like 6 or 7, staying up for hours, not getting much sleep, etc. So that was really painful as well. But yeah, so by the second week, I settled into it and all this stuff, but the family went on a ski trip for the whole week. So it was just me and Antonia. And just before they left, Anna sort of presented us with a list and said, here you go, this is everything that I need you guys to get through next week. And there was actually like jobs to do. It was like we had to clean out the horse buckets, just had sort of their stuff put in it every day, and then they'd just get hung back up again and wouldn't really get washed out, so they needed a good scrub. There was like water buckets that needed a clean out. There was their laundry, she wanted shelves put in, and Antonia had done a bit of carpentry and she was going on to a carpentry internship after working with them, like working at Anna and Jan's house. So she was happy to dive into doing all that. And they also wanted shelves put into the the storeroom in the stables as well. But then the other jobs on the list were like wash the windows, wash the floors, clean the bathroom, wash the seat covers from the dining room. It was just sort of general housekeeping things. And it was a bit, yeah, I don't know, I got the sense that it was like Anna kind of was using workaways so that she didn't have to do housework. She did bits of horse training, maybe once or twice when I was there, for about 45 minutes each. And she was like, okay, well, since the kids have someone here to distract them, I don't have to take them outside and keep an eye on them while I'm trying to work. So that's fair enough. That's actually like a fair sort of thing. But at other times, it was just like we were there helping her with the kids and things like that, which, I don't know, it was a bit like, it felt a bit exploitative. And so like once or twice, once I went for a walk because I hadn't really seen the area, and I'd been gone for about 20 minutes, half an hour, and the whole time I just felt really pressured. Like I felt this pressure, like I shouldn't be outside of the house. I should be there to help Anna in case she needs something. She needs someone to look after the kids or whatever. Or she needed something done, and so I couldn't relax that whole time that I was out walking, and I was gone for like an hour or so in total. And then, but another time, me and Antonia went out for an even longer walk, and that was fine because it was like, um, Anna was actually gone at that point, and it was Jan at home looking after the kids. And Jan was a bit more like willing to be independent. And he was like, "It's my responsibility to look after the kids. I don't need someone else to babysit while I'm home." Um, but yeah, so it was just there was this constant pressure, like you couldn't go anywhere or do anything because you were required to be in the house in case at the drop of a hat, Anna would say something like, "David, can you just feed Matthias? Dave, can you just like go and do this for me? Antonia, just come and help me with this. Antonia, just do this." So I don't know. It was a bit weird like that. Um, that we just had to drop everything we were doing and help her with her kids basically. And that was just really frustrating. And the kids themselves were like very, very energetic, and after like 2 hours of playing with them, you just like, okay, like kids settle down. Like I don't have the energy for this. But so for that second week, it was just me and Antonia in the house, and we would get through our stuff in the morning. We'd do little bits of work on the other projects in the afternoon. And by Tuesday night, I had finished the majority of the list, and it was only the big projects, the construction ones, that Antonia was still doing through Wednesday. And then Thursday, Friday, we were pretty much free. On the Friday, we drove out to an island that, like, Anna and Jan allowed us to use one of their cars that they'd left behind when they went on their trip. They went skiing up in a place called Smarland, but they told us to check out an island on the Gothenburg archipelago that had a massive castle on it, which was pretty cool. I think I put up photos of that, of when it was just like snowing quite heavily and we were walking around this town. But the town was like, so we had to catch a ferry for about 30 seconds from one island to this island where the castle was. But it operated on like a summer season, like on a seasonal thing. So during winter, everything was shut. The restaurants were shut, the bar was shut, the cafes were shut. The general store was shut. They weren't doing tours. The entire castle was locked up, so you could walk around the outside and do like a nature trail around the whole outside of the island, but there was no real people there, nothing really going on. So that was all right anyway. But yeah, it's just like when winter comes, everything shuts. So yeah, then it was, I think the family got back on Saturday, and then Sunday morning I was gone. But yeah, I left just because it was like, there wasn't enough work to do, really. And it felt more like we were being exploited to look after the kids. And, Anna and Jan, they were very friendly, but they were just kind of like, they weren't really sociable, didn't really have much to say. Jan had spent a few years living in the UK and Ireland, so he'd picked up a lot of that sort of attitude, and he could have passed for an Australian guy, really. Very sarcastic sense of humour and things like that. But yeah, just friendly people, just just not real. It was basically just like living in someone else's house. You weren't going anywhere, you weren't doing anything. By the time the afternoon rolled around, you're sitting on the couch watching TV, which just felt like a waste of my time. So I decided to leave, and I walked from their house, the 10 whatever minutes it was, to Huntorp, and caught a bus to Trollhättan and stayed in a hostel, sort of a bed and breakfast hostel there. And that was basically, Trollhättan is, it's got all these canals and locks that control like the water levels throughout the area. And there's like the main town, there's the canal, and then there's like a nature reserve, and then like all suburbs up around there. And the hostel was up there, so you had to kind of walk a little bit through a little nature preserve, cross the bridge, and then you're into the town proper. And the town's pretty small. I mean, it's got a main shopping strip, and all sort of stuff, and the usual sort of chain stores and all sorts of stuff. But otherwise, it's pretty small town vibe sort of thing. Which again was fine. Really nice. That had a lot of like other nature reserves around the area that I did a lot of walking around. That was basically it. I spent the whole week just doing the nature trails and like hiking around and stuff like that. I spent one day in bed. I just didn't feel like getting up and going out, so I just watched YouTube clips of Penn and Teller Fool Us, and just random movies and all sorts of stuff until about 1 or 2 in the morning. Basically not leaving the hotel, basically not leaving my bed. But I was thinking about spending a few days in a small town north of Trollhättan called Vänersborg that was right on the edge of a lake that's like one of the largest lakes in Europe. And that looked very nice. And sort of last minute before I left Trollhättan, I found that there was 2 big nature reserves called Hunneberg and Hulleberg, I think, or Hulberg, something like that. One had a mountain on it, and the other one was a bit sort of wild and flat, but they had like moose running wild through there and all sorts of thing. And I thought that sounds pretty cool, but I couldn't work out the public transport didn't really go close enough to it. It would still be like a 45-minute walk just to get from the public transport to the trailhead, and then it's like, well, I'm not really sure how long the trails are, and it could be a pain in the ass if I'm late in the afternoon getting back to Trollhättan and things like that. So I couldn't really work out the best way to get up there anyway. And I didn't really want to keep spending money because it was already expensive enough. Like, it was unexpected to spend money on the hotel in Trollhättan. So I looked at couch surfing, and I thought maybe I'll couch surf in Gothenburg for a little while. Maybe I'll couch surf in Vänersborg. I don't know. And I tried maybe 10 people, and one of the guys got back to me a little bit early, and he said, oh, look, I'm like from Vänersborg, and he said, I might be able to put you up for a couple of those nights. I'm still working out with my partner whether we're going to go and attend some films at the Gothenburg Film Festival that's on that weekend. So we might be staying down there. It might be too hard. But I'll let you know. And eventually he came back to me and he said, oh, actually, yeah, all good. So I can host you Friday and Saturday night. And Monday I had to go back to Gothenburg to rock up at the migration office and hand over all my biometrics and things like that. But yeah, so I was like, okay, well, that takes care of 2 nights at least, and then I can possibly find a couch surfer in Gothenburg for 1 night, or I can go to a hostel. That's going to be a lot easier in Gothenburg, and it was only like $30 for a night. But this guy who accepted me in Vänersborg, Mikael, he contacted me the day before, and he said, oh, so like me and my partner Sana are going to be in Vänersborg seeing the opening film of the Gothenburg Film Festival. So it's actually going to be streaming at a cinema in Vänersborg. And he said, I can get you an extra ticket if you like. And I went, oh, yeah, that'd be really interesting. I didn't know what film it was. And it turned out to be a Swedish film, but luckily, because it's a sort of international event, it was like subtitled in English. But yeah, so I sort of went from Trollhättan to Vänersborg on Friday and kicked around there for a couple of hours. And I met Mikael and his girlfriend Sana outside his office, which was he worked for the government of the whole sort of Western Sweden region. And he worked in, it was like a compliance thing for medical professionals and all sorts of stuff. And Sana she's a ex-psychiatric nurse, and now she teaches at a university. She's a lecturer in, it was like a drama mixed with medicine. So basically they go through and do courses in role-playing and conflict resolution and how to actually apply theoretical knowledge to practical situations, which apparently is very rare in Sweden, but it's sort of getting off track. So I met the two of them. We walked a few meters, like dumped my bag at his office, walked, 20 meters or whatever, to the theatre, and just had a sort of a general chit chat before the movie started. And they went through a whole ceremony, first of all giving an award to Alicia Vikander, who was in Gothenburg, to accept that. And they were talking about the theme of the festival, which was nationalism. And anyways, the film was okay. It was, yeah. But we started chatting about it afterwards, and Sana and Mikhail, they had a couple of really interesting points. They had a couple of like really interesting points about stuff that I hadn't really picked up on as well, and we just had a really good sort of discussion about the film. And then we went to, so they still live at, like, they still split their time between each other's houses, and they're both divorced, and they've both got 2 kids between them, a son and a daughter each. And the 2 girls are similar in age, and the 2 boys are similar in age. So they had to go to Sana's house to pick up the kids, who were all there on their own. Like Mikhail and Sana, they were very, very friendly and very talkative and all this thing. And sort of I met the kids, and it kind of got a bit quiet. Everyone started talking in Swedish. The kids, Sana's oldest daughter understands and speaks English almost fluently. The other kids don't. They know it quite well, but they're still a little bit shaky on it, so they weren't really confident to have big conversations and all this thing. But so we sort of, Mikhail and I sort of sat in the basement while Sana went and collected all clothes that she needed for the weekend. And we sat in the basement with the kids and sort of they were watching like Sweden's Got Talent. And that was a bit like, whatever sort of thing. But just sort of made chit chat with the kids a little bit, and Mikhail was helpful enough to like translate between us and things like that. And then we like grabbed all our shit and went back to Mikhail's house. He lives about 2.5 km outside of the city of Vänersborg. And he's got this gorgeous house that he was living in with his ex-wife. I had like a room to myself in a little like sort of study. The kids pretty much like ran off and entertained themselves. So the two oldest, Vega, the oldest, is 13. Then I think Alva, who's Mikhail's daughter, is 12. Then there's Sana's son, Vida, who I thought was a girl for most of that day, and then I realised the next day it was actually a boy. And then there was Malta, which is Mikhail's son, and they're probably 10 or 11, the Vida and Malta. So they all ran off and sort of went up to their rooms and played by themselves and all sorts of thing. And Malta was like just really happy to sort of show off his Xbox and all sort of thing. And I sat down and had a couple of beers with Mikhail, and then Sana kind of joined us for a couple of wines, and we just talked about the movie, and then we just started chatting about sort of what I was doing, and I was asking them a lot of questions about their work and all sorts of stuff, and they were fucking fascinating people, really, really interesting. Mikhail was like really, really chilled out kind of guy, very not spiritual, but sort of spiritual, and he'd met a lot of really interesting people. He'd lived in Australia. He lived in Ballarat as a university student for about a year with a Swedish girl that he was dating, and they were living with an Australian guy who was a bricklayer. And so I don't know. We were just sort of talking about all sorts of random stuff. And then like the kids um, came down at one point, and they had like found they'd all researched a whole bunch of puns in Swedish and English, and came down and wanted to test them, and like they were all pretty funny. Um, and then Malta was like, "Oh, do you want to come up and like see my room and all that sort of stuff?" So he was like showing me, all the little Lego minifigs that he had around, and just sort of general crap like that. And then the girls were like, "Oh, well, Alva was like, do you want to come and see my room, sort of thing?" And so we sat around in there, and Vega was like translating Swedish to English, um, and vice versa. And we were just kind of talking about all sorts of random things, and they wanted to like test their English to see whether I would say a word in English and then they would think of what the Swedish word was, and all that sort of thing. And yeah, they were just all very funny kids, and very likable. And then we were up there for must have been about 45 minutes. I'd lost track of time, and it hit midnight, and Mikhail's like come upstairs and he's gone, all right, can I like borrow Dave for a bit? And he sort of sent them all to bed. And well, when I first walked in the door, actually, I noticed that he had a little cabinet with whiskies on it, and he had a bottle of Bowmores, he had a bottle of Lagavulin, he had a Glenfiddich, he had one called Macmira that was a Swedish one, that he hadn't opened yet. There was like one of only 800 bottles. There was a Czech one called Hammerhead, and that was 25. It was a 25-year-old bottle, and what had happened was that they had the Czechoslovakians had made this whiskey, and then like casked it and let it sit, and then the Berlin Wall fell, and the place where I think no, they'd made it for the city. That's right. They had made it had been made for the government, and then the Berlin Wall fell. The government collapsed and all sort of thing, and it got forgotten about. And then it got unearthed like 25 years later or something or rather, and now they're like bottling it and selling it, which was really cool. But yeah, so we started talking. He came down, and we had a couple of whiskeys and all this stuff, and he had only just started getting into like whiskey tasting and wine tasting and things like that. He always enjoyed it, but he was sort of looking to up his knowledge about them. And so we were talking about different whiskies that we enjoy, and again, just sort of random, deep conversations about things. Talking about him and Sana were both really into film, and so we were talking about that. Movies that we really enjoyed, and blah blah blah. And yeah, so we had a couple of whiskeys, and he said to me, "Oh, do you know what? Tomorrow night we will open that Macmira. I haven't opened it. I've had it for a couple of years, and I've been waiting for a special occasion to open it. I'm going to open it with you." And I was like, "Oh no, don't don't just willy nilly open it." He's like, "No. We're going to open it. We're going to try it before you go." So it was like 2 o'clock by the time we'd finally gone to bed. And I think that night before we had gone and done some shopping that night for something or other, for dinner or something like that, or breakfast in the morning. I can't remember exactly what. That's right, yeah, me and Mikhail, we had gone and done some shopping on the way from Sana's house to Mikhail's house. And he said, "Oh, have you looked at doing the hiking trail around Hunneberg and Hulleberg?" I said, no, like I was really interested in it, blah, blah, blah. And he goes, "Okay, we'll do that tomorrow then." And I was like, "Oh, that's great." And he said, "Yeah, we'll get everyone down there." Like, he loves going on hiking trails. He does like bouldering, and Sana and him did trail running every Saturday morning for a year. They're both very, very fit. So anyway, that next day we got up, and like he made breakfast. And again, kids just, really good. quite funny and well behaved, very charismatic kids. Um, we all sort of just chit chatted about odd stuff at the kitchen table, and then it was like, all right, so everyone get dressed, let's go. And Vega went to stay with her dad for the day because she doesn't really like hiking or anything like that. And the rest of us went out and did this hiking trail, and it goes out to the edge of the lake. And there's a thing called Predigtstolen, which means preacher's pulpit. Because when you come out through the hiking trail, it stops at this cliff edge. And if you look over, there's like two rocks that make it look like a lectern or something or other. And they used to throw old people off of it into the gorge below, basically, just because they were old and useless. Mikhail was telling me. But yeah, so along the whole hiking trail, we were just, again, talking about all sorts of random conversations, all of it just absolutely fascinating, going back and forth. And then we made it to the edge of the trail there, and we're hanging out there for a while, and the kids are like, taking photos of everything and like coming back and showing me and all this stuff. And we hiked all the way back, and then we went from, that was at Hunneberg, and we went to the other one, Hulleberg, but we didn't actually hike anywhere there where they are. They've got like at the trailhead there's outdoor like coal fire barbecue things. So we had a whole bunch of sausages and just grilled them up and sat around at the picnic area and ate those. And that was like, took us until maybe 2-3 o'clock in the afternoon, something like that. And we got in the car and they were like, okay, well, what do you want to do, Dave? It's entirely up to you, whatever you feel like doing. And I said, oh, no, look, I'm pretty easy, if you guys want to stay out and do something else. And Mikhail was like, oh, well, we can go to my rock climbing gym that I own. And I was like, what? And he said, yeah, we'll go down there for like an hour or so. And Alva went with Vega's dad. So Malta, Vida, me, Mikhail, and Sana went to the rock climbing gym. And yeah, they basically just sort of, Mikhail was like telling me a lot of the fundamentals of rock climbing, and they were all very, very good at it. Sana's only done it 3 times, but she's very fit. And so we're there for like, it must have been maybe 2 hours, something or other. And then, we went shopping again for dinner that night, picked up the kids and all sorts of thing. But we were in the supermarket, and we just we pretty much grabbed all the stuff, and then we just stopped in the freezer section, the 3 of us, and just sort of leaned against the freezers and started just chatting about random stuff and like having a laugh and all sort of thing. And just very, very relaxed people, very friendly, always willing to chat, very sociable, very interesting. So then we went home, all of us had dinner together, kids went upstairs and played, and we were thinking about watching a movie. And we did a drinking game that Mikhail had picked up from Australia, being out on a boat one time. And we sat around the kitchen table, the 3 of us, and like chatted a lot more. And we were thinking about watching a movie, and then Mikhail suggested that we watch the David Letterman interview with Obama that's just come out. We were watching that, and the kids like started getting really, really rowdy, and so they were like coming down and complaining about one another and all sorts of things. But that wasn't too bad. They weren't horrible. They were just rowdy as kids are. But it was like every 5 or 10 minutes we would pause the thing, and Mikhail would go, oh, well, it's interesting that they talk about this. And we would just have a discussion about what had just been said, the 3 of us. And they just had really interesting perspectives on stuff, and we were in sync about a lot of things. Then again, we sort of stayed up and had a couple more drinks after that. And we tried the Mac Mirror that was terrible. It was really bad. But then we had another Lagavulin, and that was fucking delicious. And then, I got up in the morning and had breakfast and all sorts of thing. And they were all going, they had to look after someone else's kids for the day. So I think I kind of had to leave. They couldn't really keep me there any longer. And of course, they all had work sort of Monday. But yeah, they drove me to the train station, and Mikhail like came out with me from the car to the platform and all this stuff, and he like gave me a big hug. And well, it was funny because at the kitchen table in the morning, he'd gone turned to Vega and he was like, "Oh, like kids, have a listen to what Dave's doing on his journey here and all this stuff." And he's like actually trying to get. It was just really interesting. He was trying to get them engaged in listening to me, talk in English, but also he was just really interested in what I was doing. And I'd spoken to him about a lot of the motivations behind why I was traveling, and yeah, he was just really really interested in it, and he'd done a couple of pilgrimages himself. And he'd met a lot of people who had done similar pilgrimages and things like that. So I think he kind of understood that I was sort of on one myself. But yeah, so he was just like, he was really, really interested in everything I had to say, and I was really interested in everything he had to say. So anyway, we're at the train station. He's like giving me this big hug, and he's just like, there's just so many things I want to talk to you about. And he's like, just it's such a shame we don't have the time. But yeah, we just got on instantly, really, really well. Really, really pleased to have met one another. So yeah, then it was like from then on, I caught the train to Gothenburg, went and stayed in a hostel for the night. While I was there, I met a couple of French guys who had come from Stockholm just for the day. One of them was studying in Stockholm, and the other one was from France, but he just kind of travelled over to be with his mate for a couple of days. And yeah, just sort of started chatting to some girl from the Netherlands and some guy from Belgium, and Canadians and Ukrainians and Slovenians and all sorts of stuff, just having a sort of a chit chat. And they all, once they got into like, oh, my country does this and they say this about your country, and my language does this and it's similar, but I just dropped out of the conversation because it was just like, I got nothing to say about this. But yeah, I crashed pretty early that night. Wasn't the best sleep because of course there had to be people snoring in the room. It was in a like 10 man dorm. Got up the next day and sort of killed time, went to do my migration stuff. Nothing particularly interesting happened there. And then yeah, jumped on the train that night to Lulua. And that's about it so far. I just had to change position because the sun's moved quite a lot in the last half hour. Thoughts on Sweden so far? It's a pretty mixed bag. Hiking around has been great because the place it's like every area is just lovely. It's a really beautiful country, especially in the snow. Gothenburg's just kind of another big city, really. It's very European, cobblestones and blah blah blah, and not really any sense to its layout. But it's just a big city, lots of Indian restaurants and Thai restaurants, and English pubs and chain stores and so on and so forth. Huntorp was really nice. That was just a small town basically, but it was pretty spread out. And it was mostly just houses around there. There wasn't really anything else. Trollhättan was quite nice with the canals and all sort of thing, bridges and all the nature preserves around it. But again, just kind of a small town sort of thing. Not really too different from any other. Lulua here, all through Lapland, coming up on the train was absolutely gorgeous. Beautiful views out there. And it's much the same here. I mean, the town's a little bit sort of from what I've been walking around in, but the area is very nice. So once I sort of leave the city limits, maybe it'll be a bit nicer. the people here, um, mostly not good. Um, Everyone's pretty cold, and this is maybe just something to do with the places that I've been, because kind of going against my plan by going to I had to go to Gothenburg though, just because of my migration and getting for like stuff and getting the luggage. But there, everyone's just caught up in their own shit, you know. No one's really interested in you. Everywhere I've gone, for like some sort of service thing, restaurants and bars and all this stuff, everyone, you feel like you've done something wrong when you talk to them. Everyone's just like, why are you bothering me? Very flat. Yep. All right. That's 29 crowns. All right. That's 50 crowns. Done and dusted. Doesn't want anything to do with you. The exception was one girl in a chain coffee store yesterday who I got through most of the conversation speaking in Swedish, just tiny little things that I knew, and sort of understanding what she was saying and responding back to her and all sorts of stuff. And then she said something else like, oh, bugger, like I almost got through it all, understanding it all. And she just had a bit of she was like, oh, so like you're an Australian. And I was surprised because I was like, well, no one else has picked up on that. And she was just very, very chatty about sort of odd things and blah, blah, blah. But yeah, so that's kind of like a rare exception. Everyone else has just been like so dry. And it's like, there's no real customer care when it comes to service. It's like, if you're in a coffee place, you have to go and collect your, like, if you've got a mug or whatever, they'll just call you out and you come up and collect it as if you've gotten a takeaway. And it's like, there's still like everything's like served on like plastic trays. They'll give you your plastic tray and then like a plate and your food on or whatever. And and like a lot of places you still have to come up and put your plastic tray in the stacker trolley, of dirty dishes and all sorts of stuff. So, people will come around and like pick up the dirties and all sorts of stuff, but it's like, it's not really the first thing they do, There's no like constant service and care and all sorts of stuff. You're pretty much left to your own devices, which I don't really enjoy. Other people are just, you kind of talk to people and they're just, I say, people say hello to you on the street sometimes. I say hi to them, don't really get anything, sort of make eye contact, don't really get anything. So people just generally don't seem to be all that friendly. And like I said, maybe it's just because most of that's been in big city, like in a big city, but even around like Trollhättan and around Huntorp and things like that, people just, and around here as well, people just not really friendly. On the train, had a conversation with someone, but that was just sort of general chit chat. I think he was mostly just bored and wanted someone to talk to because he couldn't sleep. Really weird thing about coffee here is like everyone drinks like filter coffee. They're really popping, not espresso machines like you would get at Australia. I go into cafes and it's like they'll serve you filter coffee and you can go up. But some places, a place I went today, didn't do espressos at all. You went in there and you paid $3 and you had a jug of filter coffee that you just poured yourself. Which feels like a RSL almost, rather than someplace you actually pay for service or whatever. So yeah, I don't know. Yeah, not really a big coffee culture or anything like that. Not really a Swedish cuisine kind of thing. There's not really anything like that. It's mostly like sweet cakes and things like that are Swedish that they'll sell at cafes and all this stuff. But Apart from that, it's all Subways and McDonald's, and there's a burger chain called Max here. Um, Tons of Indian and all this stuff. So around Hunthorpe and Trollhättan, there were like little, like little cafe sort of places, but around the place a lot you'll see it's like it says pizza, kebab, burger, salad, and it's that sort of like deli thing where you go in there and just order fast food, basically almost like a fish and chip shop, but they seem to be pretty much everywhere. Um, Doing kebabs and burgers and all this stuff, which is really, I don't know, it's a bit weird, I thought. And they seem to be really, really popular. Um, Not popular with people, but they're popular around the place. Um, what else is there? Food's not too expensive for what you get, I guess. I mean, supermarkets are kind of, yeah, similar prices to everywhere else. Eating out, yeah, it's a little bit more expensive, but you get a bigger meal for it. So I was paying like $20 to $25 for burgers, but you're getting like big burgers and chips and all that sort of stuff. Beer's pretty expensive. So all of the like even in a bar, it's pretty expensive. All the alcohol you buy is either at the supermarket, where it's all below like 4% alcohol, and it's cheap as shit though. I paid about $5 for a 6 pack of 500 ml beers, but that was like a 3.2% alcohol, maybe less than that, 2.7 maybe. But all the other alcohol is sold through a chain of government-owned stores called System Bolaget. And it's like they don't seem to sell things in like 4 or 6 packs. You get individual bottles or cans of beer, or you get like a 24 pack. And they sell bottles of wine as well, and like whiskies and all that sort of stuff. Whiskies, a little bit cheaper than Australia, not by much though. A few other varieties of brands I know that are sold there. I looked at the Australian wines and it's all shit. It's like Yellowtail was there, and a bunch of other ones that I've never heard of before from like New South Wales and Victoria, that I'd never seen in Australian bottle shops. So apparently a good wine can be bought in a box. Apparently that's quite alright to buy boxed wine. It's not too bogan. I don't know, but yeah. So there doesn't really seem to be a drinking culture or anything like that here. They do after work drinks. A lot of the bars will have specials and all sort of thing, and they'll put out like little nibbles as well. Apparently, although I didn't get to see it anywhere. But I talked to Jan about, like, I asked him for a pub recommendation. I said, and he didn't really know any. And I said, oh, so you don't do like Friday afternoon drinks or Friday lunch drinks or something around? He's like, no. Even him, having lived in the UK and Ireland, he thought it was a bit weird. And he was saying, it'd be ridiculous in Sweden to have drinks in the middle of the day and then drive home. It'd be very unusual. So yeah, there's definitely not that sort of drinking culture going on. There was quite a few cocktail bars and pubs in Gothenburg. I didn't get a chance to go to any of them though. But they all seem to do sort of the usual stuff. And they all seem to be very, very popular. But again, on like, they were open till late on Sunday nights even, but, again, like a Friday night after work drinks and things like that. So, I don't know, this isn't my favourite place. I was pretty ready to leave Sweden after about a week. But, so that's why I was like flip-flopping about coming up north here or not, because it was like, I don't know whether for, what I'm getting out of it, whether it's going to be worth it, for all the costs and things like that. But I guess the landscape is nice and things like that. And this is something different to see, this sort of climate. And there's still like a local festival going on in Jokkmokk, the next town I go to in a couple of days. So it'll be good to see that. Now I've got work in northern Norway, so I've got a reason to come all the way up here. But yeah, just I was pretty miserable after that first week. Just because it didn't really seem like anything was working out, and really struggling to find work, struggling to find couch surfing, struggling to find, anyone who really wanted to talk. It's picked up a bit now. I've had a few more conversations with work opportunities and things like that. So I've got up until April lined up. Yeah. So the Fika thing. So Fika's this thing basically of like coffee and snacks, coffee and like pastry sort of things. That's supposedly like integral to the culture and all this stuff. And I haven't really seen it going on, and a lot of people no one really seems to talk about it. And I asked Mikhail, and he said, no, it's very, very popular at work. So if you're at work and your managers join in with you, and everyone kind of socializes. So that's kind of their version of, pub drinks, I guess. You have coffee and cakes and things like that at work, and just chat about work or chat about each other's lives or something or other. So it's not something that I've seen, not something that people really talk about, but it is something that goes on. I wasn't really sure about that for a while. I thought it was just like one of those sort of tourism things that gets talked about, but it's not really relevant to daily life. But yeah, so I don't know, not much else to say, I guess. That's really about it so far. One thing I did forget to mention was that buffets seem to be very popular. So a buffet lunch is a popular way to eat, it seems. A lot of places do it. But there's sushi bars everywhere. But there's no sushi train. No one does a sushi train. You go into a sushi bar and you've got set menus of like 4 rolls and 6 sashimi, or 4 nigiri and 3 sashimi and things like that. And that's the way to buy sushi. One place I saw you could buy individual nigiri and things like that, but you can't go into a sushi train. Everywhere is you sit down and you order a plate of random sushi, which is really annoying. And it's like still the same price. It's like $10 or something or other for one of these plates of sushi. But yeah, I don't know. That's kind of an annoying one, because I've really wanted to sit in a sushi train for a while and just have that. Yeah. One other thing I will say is people's command of English. So almost everybody speaks English. They'll assume you speak Swedish and they'll talk to you in Swedish. The thing is that talking to them in English isn't always a guarantee that they will respond to you in English. They'll often respond to you in Swedish, and then you have to go, oh, well, sorry, I don't speak Swedish, or something or other. So yeah, they'll go, hey, and you go, hello, how's it going? And they'll respond to you in Swedish. And you're like, sorry, like, can you talk English, please? So, I mean, it's good that most people do speak English. Everyone seems to understand it perfectly well. I've met a couple of older people in like their 40s or 50s who have struggled a bit, or maybe didn't speak it. But yeah, for the most part, everyone speaks English, which is quite convenient. But there's not a lot of English around. Everything's in Swedish. Luckily, it's like close enough to English that you can infer what's going on with signs and things like that, and so on. But yeah, there's like very, very little English around the place, which is quite surprising, considering everyone speaks it. And yeah, one thing that Sana was telling me was that there's actually I commented on the fact that people speak English very well, and she said there's actually a stigma in Sweden of speaking English with a Swedish accent. Because she was saying, obviously Swedish, it's like la da 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 da. It's kind of tonal rhythm, and there's lots of yeah, this is Swedish, this is svenska. But she's like, if you can't talk like that in English, to the point where if that's the way that you speak English, they won't talk English to you because they feel very self conscious, and no one wants to sound Swedish. Everyone wants to sound perfectly British or American English. So I thought that was interesting. That yeah, there's like a sort of a general social stigma on not being 100% accurate with your English, which I guess isn't really applicable everywhere else. Antonia was saying that a lot of people speak English there, but not perfectly, and she was in like camp choirs and things like that, and she said that during one of the songs, um, they like German doesn't pronounce like th. That like so they say it as like an s instead. Um, like I think this is or whatever. So yeah, they was like saying, and like that became an issue where it was like the conductor was saying like, now if you can't say think, say think, don't say sink or zinc or something like that. But yeah, so people seem to be a lot more okay there with pronunciation mistakes, but apparently it's a big no no here. So I don't know, interesting.